I really don't like the term street photography, because what is street photography? It's life. You're documenting the human experience. Or it's not even the human experience. It can be the architectural experience. It can be found objects. It can be an environment. So I consider myself a photographer of life and the human experience, as opposed to street photography in inverted commas, because I find that word kind of pigeonholes you into something.
So, welcome back everybody to a new episode of Eyeshot 50mm, and in this episode we're joined by Australian photographer Markus Andersen, author of the Eyeshot limited edition book The Grey Hours, a work shaped by light, tension, atmosphere, and the presence of humans within the contemporary urban space. The Grey Hours is available for pre-order until June 30th. And Markus, thank you again for being with us, and welcome.
You're welcome.
And for everybody who's watching, I just want to leave a small message to keep liking and keep subscribing, because with just a small click to you, it means the world to support independent street and documentary photography. At the same time, you can now listen to all our interviews as form of podcasts on all major platforms. So, Markus, let's actually just start immediately and let's dive into the very first question, the toughest one that we always ask, which is, who is Markus Andersen according to Markus Andersen?
I don't know. I don't really have any idea, to be honest, who I am. I don't know who I am. I'm someone that's lived a life and experienced lots of things, both happiness and tragedy, and that informs the work. I can start from the beginning. I have been a photographer for quite a while, and commercially and in terms of my art practice. Always been based in Sydney, always shot sort of documentary / streets / found objects. But yeah, who am I? I'm a creative who enjoys looking at the world, and who enjoys being surprised sometimes when I look through the lens of what I shoot. And I think that's one of the greatest things as a photographer, when you experience the unexpected. And that's what keeps me going. That thing where you see something in a frame and you're like, wow, I didn't see that hand popping in. I didn't see the balloon. So yeah, I don't know. Who am I? I'm a work in progress. I think we all are, right? So
Yes, I like that definition, a work in progress. Absolutely. I might steal that from you, actually. You've moved
I
between...
think we're all a work in progress. It's like everything that happens in our lives informs us and changes us, and we go in a different trajectory depending on our life experiences. And that in itself changes how we shoot, and that in itself changes how we think and changes the narrative of our practice as an artist.
Absolutely. You just mentioned that you moved between freelance work to documentary photography, portrait, street photography, and you actually came now, if I'm not mistaken, to what you call life photography. How would you exactly define this practice in your own terms?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I really don't like the term street photography, because what is street photography? Exactly. It's life. You're documenting the human experience. Or it's not even the human experience. It can be the architectural experience. It can be found objects. It can be an environment. So I consider myself a photographer of life and the human experience, as opposed to street photography in inverted commas, because I find that word kind of pigeonholes you into something. It's better to just say you document life, people, and places, and objects and existence. Yeah. So I think that's life photography is probably an apt word to use for what I do.
Yes, absolutely. I really like this definition. Everything we see, everything we experience, it's life. So applied to photography, it totally makes sense. I want to just dive a little bit more, because I find your background very, very interesting. And I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your freelance work. So as we were saying before, you spent years working as a freelancer and then you stopped. And I wanted to ask you, at what point did you feel that making photographs for others in a certain way was not enough for you anymore, but you wanted to do it for your own.
Well, it's like anything in life. If it comes to the point where you stop liking photography. Do you know what I mean? That it kind of drains you as a freelance, depending on the freelance work you do. But the reality is, with freelance work, it's not going to be the most creative work. It's just going to be the work that pays the bills. And so it's that balance of how much work do you do at the expense of your own work. And it came to a point for me where it was like, you still have to earn money. Obviously, as a human, we have to pay bills. That's just reality. And we have to do that. However, it's about balancing the freelance work with documentation and being an artist. So if I can get work that appreciates my eye, it's fantastic. But there just comes a point, I think, for a lot of photographers and creatives, designers, whoever, where you kind of, you get to a point in your life where you think, you just have to make a decision of what you want to do. And I made a decision that I wanted to focus primarily on my art practice, my documentation, my documentary work, producing books, producing shows, and sort of, because we only have so much time on this planet. So we have to get our priorities right, because when we look back, I don't know, maybe I'm just talking too much, but I just think when we look back, we have to say we're proud of what we did, and we followed the path of our trajectory, whatever that is intended to be.
And is there something from your freelance work years that still serves you in your own practice, photography practice today, or your way of doing?
Look, like a lot of people, when I first came out of studying, I did weddings and I did wedding photography. However, I only did wedding photography that was documentary wedding photography, meaning it was like a narrative, a story. So there was no posing, there was no any of that. And it did teach me how to capture a decisive moment. It did teach me how to wait and use ambient light in a way, and to deal with human beings at obviously stressful times in their lives. Whereas the other stuff, if you're shooting events or you're doing work for numerous clients, it doesn't work that way as much. However, I'd say out of all the things, when I used to shoot weddings, I guess you're always looking for the heightened moment, that moment of that epiphany of an image. And that's, I guess, out of all the freelance work that I used to do. Now the freelance work was a bit more kind of architectural based or stuff like that. So not as many humans involved.
Okay. Because there's one thing that I found interesting, because as you were saying before, we need all to pay bills. We're sons of capitalism in a way, So in today's time, I feel like try to build a life around personal work almost feels like also a contradiction if you don't really put it all in it, if I'm explaining myself. So how do you deal with the friction between an image economy, I guess, that rewards constant outputs, with rather an approach to photography that, pass me the term, takes slow time, slowness, it's uncertain in certain aspects? How does it work for you?
Well, to be honest with you, like all of us, we started on Instagram a while back. Okay. I think back, I remember 2015, 16, 17, there was a bit of a community on Instagram. It was sort of like a photographic community. You could connect with many creatives back then. And it was very different to how it is now. So I think the need with social media to produce work and to put yourself out there all the time is a negative in some ways to me. That's why I shoot film. I'm still shooting film, and I shoot film a lot now. I'm shooting film more than I ever have for my personal work, because I'm not sharing that work. I'm not. I will eventually, but I the need to produce work all the time, and not in terms of freelance work, in terms of my practice, it's getting less and less what I share on Instagram, because I think that the more you throw yourself out there and show your work, it's like it's published already. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's published. So, yeah, I think there is definitely, it's, I've got to the point, I'd say in the last year, where I'm sharing less and just shooting my own work, and thinking of projects all the time. Like for me, random shooting, it never really worked. I always had to have like parameters. So I'm shooting quiet, quietness in the city, quietness in this, mood, whatever. There's got to be bookends to what I'm shooting. Just saying, "Oh, I'm just going to go out and shoot," that really works, because you do need sort of, I'm going to go and shoot this suburb or this group of people or this. It's always got to be there's got to be, you got to think like an artist. You have to have, you know what I mean? It's not just random. Well, for me personally, other people can shoot random, whatever. It's all good.
Sure.
But for me, I do need uh, a narrative, like a loose narrative behind the work. It's like if someone said to a photographer, "Go and photograph a door," for a week. Then that's easy. You can just focus on getting an amazing shot of a door for a week. Whereas when people say just shoot anything, that's far more difficult for me.
Absolutely. And I like that you already dived into the analog versus digital kind of topic, because I have a question for you about this and I'm very interested about it. I feel like you described the analog, the film photography, as a very organic but also like demanding approach. It's totally different from digital, like everybody knows that. But what does analog still make possible for you that digital doesn't? Exactly. In terms of the technicalities as well, or way of feelings. We talked about Instagram fare, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into this.
Yeah. Well, for me, like, for example, recently I shoved a roll of just Kodak in one of my Leicas and went into the city. I just shot 36. I was so measured in those 36 images. And I came away with like 6 strong imagery, like 6 strong shots, really good shots. And it was just incredibly, the way it slowed me down, the way it made me think, the way it made me not like sort of, and the result itself, it's like I'm excited. Like I've always loved the imperfection of film. Like when you get the negs and you even process your own negs, the rebates are eating into the actual film, and it's all weird and doesn't work all the time, and unexpected things happen. And I still to this day love that, because digital, it's a necessity. That's what it is. But every time I shoot digital, I end up trying to make it look like a film image all the time. Like I grain it up, I do this, I do that, I make it look imperfect. So analog for me, it's almost like a meditation still, if I go out and shoot it, and it feels special. It really does still to this day feel special when I put a roll in. If I put a roll of black and white in, I'm going to push process it by 2 stops or do something crazy with it and use a certain developer and get some kind of thing that's like unexpected and raw and beautiful. Yeah, that's why I still love it. And the cameras themselves are much more
Beautiful.
awesome than
Yeah.
digitals. I mean, you pick up an old school Nikon, an old school Leica, and you hold those things, they're like bricks and they feel industrial and beautiful. I know many people say, "Oh, it's not the equipment," but it is, someone who paints like their brushes, someone, who draws like the certain elements they use, photographers themselves, it does mean something to actually like what you're shooting with. Whereas sometimes with digital, it's a bit sort of like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, of course, everybody decides what fits best for themselves, and that's totally fair. I want to still, I've read that in your, I guess, film, like Into the Belly of the Beast, if I'm not mistaken, like the video you've done, we see you like shooting with different kind of gears from like digital to analog, but also with an iPhone as well. I want to know from you, what did you feel in switching all of this, and how real have you found this analog versus digital debate, or is it just a
It's just
mythology?
boring. It's like, it's been
It's
going
just
on for
boring.
so many years. It's not like it's something, this is just, I remember reading like in 2017, people talking about this. I mean, you shoot what you like and that's it. You shoot what you enjoy. With iPhones, I always used Hipstamatic, and I always did. And I've got this weird little I've got an iPhone from 2013, right? And it's got It's got all the hipstermatic stuff from back then, and it was different. And it's not perfect, but it shoots images that are still look like they're like film. They're imperfect. The micro contrasts are really interesting and odd, and they mimic film beautifully. So yeah, I still shoot. I mean, look, you don't always have your Leica on you, or your Nikon on you, or whatever. Sometimes you just got your phone. And if you see an image, you know, a photographer or an artist always is looking nonstop. You can't help it. You just see things. And if all you've got is your iPhone, then you shoot it. Back then with Belly of the Beast, I guess my thinking hasn't changed so much. You shoot with what you've got, and that's it. You know, I mean, if we look back in the 30s or the 40s, the cameras they're shooting with, some of the best images in the world are with some tech that's, you know, so it really doesn't matter as long as you can get the image, whatever it's with, whether it's an iPhone, whether it's a Nikon, whether it's a Sony, whatever. It doesn't matter in the end. It's just, to me, anyway.
Of course, that's what you think, and it's totally fair and it makes absolute sense. But speaking more in general, do you think that digital photography has in some way changed the way photographers look, or they produce or we produce and consume?
100%, because I can tell when I go out, shoot a roll of film, or I go with a digital, your mindset is completely different. You know, you just change, and it's a different narrative about the way you think. Not only that, it's the fact that, you know, unfortunately, when you shoot digital, no matter who you are, you're going to look at the back of the camera. You're going to check what you've got. Okay. With film, you don't check it. It's a difference between looking and viewing. Okay. So when you shoot digital, you're shooting and then you're viewing. With film, you're just looking. That's it. And you're only seeing. And the problem is, the second with digital, for me personally, I remember I shot a book called Cabramatta ages ago. And I remember I got a really strong image early in the morning. Okay. And I looked at it. I was shooting with Fuji back then. And I looked at that image and I thought, okay, I've got that. I can't do better today. I can't do better. So my brain kind of canceled the rest of the day out. It was like, well, I can't top that. And that's what happens with, like, for me, it's like when I shoot film, it changes you. You just sit back, you relax, you shoot it, you only see, and then you leave. And with digital, still to this day, every time I shoot it in a creative aspect, not a commercial aspect, you second guess yourself, and you don't live in the moment as much. See, I mean, like, I've got a Nikon ZF at the moment, and with the Nikon ZF, you can turn it so you can't see the screen. So it's just like that. And that's how I'm shooting now with that. So I don't want to look at it. Obviously, I want to get the exposure right and all that stuff. But once it's set and once I know the lighting, I just shoot it and leave it now. And I try and treat it like film because that's just what I enjoy.
That's very, very interesting. Now I want to actually switch gears a little bit, and I want to dive a little bit deeper into your style and I guess the risk of, in general, of course, stylization. I think that's the correct word, because your work, I feel it's immediately recognizable for its light, for the shadows, for the contrast, for everything that comes with it. But at what point do you think a visual language becomes a signature and at the same time can become a trap for an artist?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I guess in Sydney, like in certain locations around the world, you are dictated by the light. So the light in Sydney, especially in summer, is like a sledgehammer. Okay. It's incredibly hard. It's incredibly strong, and it's unavoidable. It's like if you're shooting in the UK, the light's going to be softer, and or Europe, it's going to be different. Here, it's like a sledgehammer. However, if you're shooting street photography, you know, I mean, I remember back in the early 2000s, kind of when I started, well, people obviously like Trent Park and photographers like that, whose work I saw when I was studying, and it gets into your brain, and it does in some ways I don't know, it sits in your head. So with my own work personally, so many times I've shot strong light and hard light, and I just groan because I think I've done that before, and I, in terms of a lot of the images, the best images I've shot aren't in that hard light. A lot of the images I like the most through my previous work were in like overcast light, because you focus more on the subject and not the scene. Whereas when the light is strong, and like in Sydney, it's almost like a stage that you're setting up, and you set up the stage, and the actors walk in, you wait for the moment, you shoot it, and use the light. And I think a lot of the time, especially in this country and countries similar, the light is the strongest, most dominant point, the shadows. What's not seen, it's the darkness. It's the negative space that so many of the times in work is what's interesting. And what comes out of the negative space, the hand that pops out, or the half face, or things like that. Yeah, it's a trap. As you said to me, it's a blessing and a curse. You get trapped. Like all photographers, like sometimes you take an image and you're like, I can't believe I just shot that again, because I'd done that before. Why did I just shoot that again? But yeah, so it is a blessing and a curse, from the history and the way of shot. And I think all artists try and do something different. They attempt to, hopefully.
And how do you tell the difference between an image that for you is truly necessary in a way and one that is just aesthetically well composed or like effective?
Well, the thing is, that's why I said you curse yourself sometimes, because you shoot the image, it's well composed, it's interesting, but it's boring. It's okay. It's fine. It's a really good photo, but it doesn't have that element, that kind of randomness that you need in some imagery to take it from a good image to something special. And most of the time, the strongest images I've ever got were unexpected. They were not set up. They weren't like, as I said, waiting for a scene. There was just a moment where you saw somebody or something and you raced to that moment, because it's almost like, in Star Wars, the Force. It's almost like a convergence of something that hits you, and you just know. Just like you can feel it sometimes. Something's happening and you can't explain what it is. And that's when I love photography. That unexpected moment where you sense it. I don't know how photographers do it, artists do it. And like, that's the difference. That's when I consider something special. Like when you create something random that you didn't expect. And as I said to you, I get frustrated in myself when I can see a scene, it's really cool, the light's great, the shadows are doing good things, but you kind of look at it and go, you know what, I've done this before. But you do have to do that stuff, because you never know what could pop into the frame. Something crazy could happen. So yeah, for me, it's always the strongest images I've ever shot was stuff that just appeared. Wasn't sort of like a stage with people coming into it.
And when you edit your work, what is it that you actually look first? Like, what are you really looking for in the photographs you've shot?
I don't know. It's weird, because a lot of the time with editing, you don't necessarily see the strongest photos straight away. You need time, because you're too close to the image. Like, you need to sit back for a couple of months and re-look at it, because most of the time what you think is an incredible image, when you shoot it, you look back at it and you're excited, you shot it and you thought, it's also that thing is what you saw in the moment is not what other people are going to see. The viewer is going to see something very different to what you saw. So what you thought was important in the image is not what everyone else is going to see. So I always think with editing, you have to wait and sit back and give it some time, because a lot of the images, when you look through your library, stuff I've seen over the years where I didn't even look at. But it's also, you change as a human being, and your life changes how you see things. So what appealed to you 3 years ago through life experiences changes, and you see value in images that maybe weren't necessarily to you incredibly strong straight away, but over time we look at them and you see nuance in them. and value.
Okay. And going deeper into your approach to editing, to post-production, you've said that in a couple of different instances that you want it to be impossible to distinguish whether it was made like by analog means or digital means. So what kind of level or what kind of approach towards post-production allows you to have this coherence throughout your photos?
Well, look, for me, I always shoot JPEG RAW, always. Okay, and when you can, whether it's on some cameras, for example, a Ricoh, the little Ricoh, you can play around with that stuff, and you can get a kind of filmic JPEG out of it. But that's just a rough sort of. It's almost like well, I'll shoot a rough JPEG, and then I'll shoot RAW, and then it doesn't matter what camera it is. I try and get it back. I don't know why, to sort of a very organic look, no matter what it is. And as I said to you, that's why I've sometimes liked the old iPhone photos, because they're imperfect, like the tech isn't there. So they look organically analog, naturally. If you shoot something with a Leica digital, it's so perfect. It's so beautiful. It's almost like it's like, why shoot with a Leica if I'm going to try and make it look like a 2002 digital camera or something, or you know what I mean? So sometimes it's like, well, that's why I'm shooting film more, because I'm like, what am I doing? Just shoot it in film and you've got it, and that's it, But at the same time, there is, for me, value in digital as well, because it really depends on the subject matter and what you're shooting. But yeah, in terms of workflow at the end, I'll shoot a JPEG, not, as sort of a starting point, and then I'll get the RAWs, and if I have to work them, I'll work them, whether in Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever, to get to the point where you buy a $10,000 camera to make it look like a 1983 point and shoot. So it's pretty crazy.
It is. It is. And according to you, in looking at the contemporary photography scene, what do you think photographers obsess too much over in terms of gears? And what do you think instead they do not think about enough? Sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look on YouTube, it's like everything is gear obsessed. It's still, I mean, you look at it and it's like, unfortunately for me, I look at it and I sort of just groan, because it's, I've said this so many times in other interviews and everything, that yes, you have to have a good camera. It has to work. It has to have a decent lens, all that stuff. And I do see the value. Look, I do see like some companies that produce some interesting lenses now for Leicas, trying to, recreate a lens from the 70s. What is it? Mandler? Is that the company that they're producing really interesting Leica lenses that they kind of trying to mimic something from the past, which I find really interesting, because it's an imperfect lens, But yeah, I mean, the subject's been going around forever about gear and stuff like that. I don't know. I have the gear I have, as long as it works and it's fine. I mean, you've got to start with digital from a good point. So you need good cameras. So it's better to have great files, and you can rupture them if you want. You can bring them down to something. And it seems strange, like a false dawn, to do it. But yeah, the whole digital equipment thing, I sort of, I don't know, you get to the point I just don't care.
I like this. That's fair. We will get into a little bit more, let me say, hot takes of contemporary photography in a second. But I want to go actually a little bit back or forward, as we prefer. And I want to discuss about gray hours. I want to dive deeper into this project, because it really, for me, that's the sense I had it the first time I saw it. It is not built around dramatization or spectacle or something like that. What kind of photographic experience did you want to share with this book and this approach that you have?
I mean, it's not about, okay, it was shot in Sydney, but it's not about Sydney. It's just happenstance that this is the place I exist in. The grey hours, it's about the fact that no one's performing for the camera. It's the fact that it's just their quiet moments, whether it's with human beings, whether it's found objects, whether it's the environment. It's like the weather. It's there, but you don't notice it all the time. Yeah, this work is very much, I thought The Grey Hours was just a really good title because it's almost like while we're sleeping, with the imagery that nothing is announcing itself, nothing is, I mean, there are strong images in there, of course, but there's a lot of quiet imagery in there. Two people staring out at the ocean, whether it's just a stretch of light or shadow stretching across a wall. It's almost like a meditation. Yeah, I don't know. It's very esoteric, The Grey Hours. When I thought of the title, it just sort of came to me that it's the moments where things are quiet. Things are happening. You're in the city, you're in the city or the suburbs or the beach, and there's life happening around you. But nothing is necessarily announcing itself or jumping at you. It's just sort of a quiet mood.
And that's the gray, right? The gray
grey,
zone.
sort of the
you're
in-between moment. It's like the in-between. This or that, it's sort of
a suspended.
Yeah, it's like that sort of, it's hard to describe. A quietness. No one's performing, it's just like quiet observation of what is happening in life. And it can be a nuanced image of an expression of a face, or the way a shadow hits a tree, or a way that a bunch of poles stick out of the ground into the sky, and you see an image of a plane in the background hidden. Quite sort of, as I said, sort of a meditative grey in between. I guess I don't know how to describe it.
Suspended, I feel visual, emotional state. I don't know. That's, I guess, what I've gotten from it.
Yeah, well, it's not like something it's sort of it's not like a sledgehammer approach. It's sort of a kind of as I said to you, it's not a narrative there's no real narrative. It's just observation of mood, of light, of environment. And it is Sydney, Australia, and people can record that city any way they want. But this book isn't about that. It's about the work is, as I said, it's like the weather. The weather's there and it's around, but it's not announcing itself. It just exists with you. And a lot of the images are like that.
And if someone opens The Grey Hours without knowing your work directly, what do you hope they would feel before even trying to understand it, if that makes sense?
I don't know. There's a weird isolation in the work, and it's a weird thing to say. It's like not isolation, but kind of explain it. It's like there's a quietness to it. Some of the images they don't really announce themselves. Some of them are a bit more dynamic, but I'd like people to see kind of more of a story of mood and of time and the way time moves. I don't know. It's like a sense of place, a sense of mood, a sense of time. And some of the images I find are quite meditative, and I just hope they find when they look at the work, it's there's dynamic work in there, but it's also like, it's like a story of, it's like there's fast bits, there's slow bits, there's bridges, then it speeds up, then it slows down, then it's like a peaceful image, and then there's something more sort of more resting. So yeah, I hope they kind of find almost like a piece of music going like this. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, moving forward instead, if you look at the contemporary photography scene, what is it, one idea that it's widely accepted idea or approach or technique or whatever you like that is widely accepted but that you find overrated, that bores you, that really doesn't flow your...
I mean, look, one thing I went to university, etc. I never look, everyone can do what they want. I don't care. Anyone can, with their own practice. It's all good, whatever. I've never liked particularly, an essay, you write the essay first and you write the words and then the image comes secondary. I mean, I've always sort of believed whatever, if you go to art school, it's more kind of the artisan approach, the talent with the hands or the eye or whatever. Not that I'm saying anything's wrong with it. If a creative is an academic and they use the imagery to back up everything, fine or good. But for me personally, also I think in terms of street photography, and it's something I'm guilty, I see a lot of times you see the same street imagery I saw 10 years ago on Instagram. It's that same kind of coming out of shadows stuff. And I'm guilty of shooting the same stuff, and I've done it and everyone does it, and I curse myself when I've done it and like, why did you shoot that? It's just predictable and boring. But in terms of the contemporary work, I look back most of the time, to be honest with you, at the work of artists and creatives from the 70s and the 80s and the 90s as well, who inspire me. Maybe it's boring, maybe I'm stuck in a genre from a long time ago, but I've always really adored the street photography from the 70s and the 80s. And people like Ray K. Metzger and Tony Ray Jones and Ian Berry, who did an amazing book called The English, I think 1982. Yeah, I do like that era where kind of documentary and street photography mesh. And it's, I always find, in terms of contemporary stuff, as I said, I don't judge anyone. Everyone has their own thing. So do what you like and be happy with it.
Yes, be whoever. The next question I have for you, because we've been talking about Instagram 10 years ago and now, or in general, digitization and what has brought to photography. Do you think that today social media have maybe rendered photography more democratic, or it has more rewarded, as we also have mentioned a bit, fastness or a safer and more easy way of recognize images?
But I think, like with Instagram, you know exactly what will work. You put an image up, it's simplicity because people look at it for a second. So if you have a complex image, people are less likely to look at it. So if you got something that's just like silhouettes or shadow based or something really obvious, but Instagram's changed tremendously. It's not what it was 10 years ago. It's completely different now. And I think it's, a more influencer based sort of platform now. And I hear a lot of people frustration that they're not getting the engagement they once were. And it's changed. I mean, even in myself, I still post imagery and stuff like that, but it's definitely changed. Yeah, it has changed a great deal in the whole social media thing the last 5 years, I'd say. So I don't know. I think I've got to the point now I just post whatever and I don't really care. If I like something, I'll post it and whatever. If it doesn't get engagement, I don't care. It's what I wanted to post.
I feel like there are a lot of good sides of technology. There are bad sides of technology or social media or digitization. Because at the same time, yes, Instagram, it's not always the perfect example. But if we think about maybe Flickr, at the early years of Flickr, that was a very interesting platform that really connected, perhaps, photographers from around the world, could give feedbacks to each other.
You met incredible people you didn't expect to meet. Like, you'd be like, wow, this
Exactly.
Magnum photographer's liked my work.
And there wasn't this fastness, I don't know, the speed, not fastness.
Now it's changed a great deal. And as I said, now it's a different thing completely. I mean, there's threads as well, which is quite interesting. And it seems a bit more community based, which I think is nice. But yeah, I mean, in the end, you've just got to shoot your own work and not worry about social media. Because for me, if you're an artist, you just have to put your head down and shoot your work. And that's it. You think of projects, you shoot projects, you have I really believe in time frame. Like I myself as a photographer, I think more like someone who maybe is a painter or someone a sculptor, and then they're with a commercial gallery and they say you've got a year to produce this work. That's it. Not meandering projects that go on for 5 years. Sorry, the cat's in his little box, so you can probably see her. But you know what I'm saying? It's like that thing I always believe very much in having, like when I shot a book called Cabramatta, it was Lunar New Year to Lunar New Year. That was it. That's all I had to shoot. If I'd shot it for 3 years, I probably could have got stronger work. But you just say, okay, here's a start point, here's an end point. So I think in terms of social media, use it to how you want to use it, connect with people the best you can, but if you're truly serious about your work, you just have to kind of put your head down and shoot your work and not worry about all that stuff.
Absolutely. And just shoot. So do you think that maybe too many photographers today are more trying to build a brand first rather than a body of work?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, as I said, I don't judge people, but a lot of time people look on YouTube and stuff. It's, it's all about kind of, yeah, it's a brand. It's not the work. And that is the difference between someone who influences people on YouTube, Instagram, and someone who's an artist. And I don't judge people, but I think that the branding it's completely different. It's a different world completely to a producer, who shoots bodies of work and is serious about stuff. It's two different. It's like two train tracks that are opposite. They're parallel, but they don't connect. And for me, I kind of just. I mean, look, everyone watches Instagram stuff, and I watch stuff on equipment because everyone does now and then. But personally, yeah, it's sort of, I'm very much in the camp of just being an artist and producing my work. And I can't brand myself. I'm just a photographer, an artist. That's it. It should be the work that is dominant, and it's the work that matters, because you can't ever always think about branding and worry about, oh, am I going to get, is this going to be a book? Is this going to work out? Is this going to happen? Is this going to go anywhere? Or is it just going to sit in a drawer? You just have to, I've given up so many projects because I've thought it's not going to go anywhere, which is bad. You just have to be passionate, and if you believe in it, you shoot it. If it goes somewhere, it goes somewhere. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But that's being an artist and creative.
And do you think for in today's time for a young photographer starting out, like, is it still possible to live off photography without diluting your own work into different?
Depends on the country you're in, to be honest with you.
Interesting.
It does. It depends on, Australia's a small population, isn't massive. So you have to be willing to do everything and anything. Yes, it's far more difficult now. That's what I'm going to say. Like, yeah.
And if you had to give like a little piece of advice to a young photographer that wants to start out, or maybe to your younger self in a way, what would it be?
I always wanted to work at a paper. That's what I wanted to do. But I don't know, one of my lecturers or teachers told me, no. The best advice I could probably give is you have to diversify massively. It depends, again, on the where you live. The greatest hope you can have as a photographer and a creative is that people are booking you because of your eye, because of how you see the world, your unique eye. And I would say that never give that up. Always, it's difficult to say because sometimes you just have to do what you have to do to live. But all I could say is that, always focus on your personal work, and always focus on personal work, because the personal work is what people actually want to see. I would say that's who you are. So if we're going to use you, it's your unique eye that brings something to it. So yeah, all I could really say is the world's changed so much. I don't know. It's such a different landscape now to 15 or 20 years ago. But yeah, I think the only advice I could really is never give up your personal work. Shoot your own work, because it's your own unique eye and voice that will be most valued.
Okay. And very final question that I feel like would definitely conclude on everything we said so far. After everything photography has given you, and if I may, has taken from you somehow, what still makes you return to the craft?
Because deep down, it was the only thing I was really good at. Do you know what I mean? Like, I remember when I first started studying at a place called the Australian Centre for Photography, and sort of late 90s, early 2000s, they gave everyone a roll of film, and they said, you got 1 week, shoot a roll of film, right? So we all came back and we showed what we shot. And I realized at that point, what I shot was different. Like, everyone else did very specific things, and I shot weird stuff. And I always remember he set me aside and he said, you've got a different eye. And that, for me, I guess that was a point, photography, well, I see things differently to other people. If someone asked me to go and photograph something, I would shoot it in a strange way and see it in a different way. So I always respected that, to not spit in the face of a talent you've been given. And yeah, for me personally, it was just that I knew photography. I had some kind of leaning towards it I could do naturally. But in terms of what is given and taken away, it's a very difficult question, because it's given a lot, but it's taken away things as well. Because unfortunately, sometimes as a creative, you can say, I can never be anything but a photographer. That's it. It's this or that, or I'm homeless, which I realized, looking back at my life, it was a bit of a sort of I should have seen things in more of a gray area rather than, so yeah. Being a creative, any world, it takes and it gives. It's just the path you follow.
Perfect. Markus, I thank you so much for this interview and for this talk. I hope I made you feel comfortable as much and
It was
free.
great. It was casual and nice. I hope what I said was okay. Sometimes it's difficult to know. It's difficult to know what to say sometimes.
But that's the beauty in the photographer and the personality that you have in front of you, like for me, at least with you. So I just want to thank you one more time. And I want to remind everybody who's watching to pre-order The Gray Hour until June 30th, which is still available for pre-order, and to keep liking and keep subscribing to support independent street and documentary photography. Markus, thank you again, and see you next time.
Yeah, you're welcome.